Andrew, you've just returned from your latest international trip. What are some of the observations that you can share with us?
So it's interesting, this time the recovery, which I do believe is sustained, I've seen really positive signs in the US, the UK, Europe, particularly Germany's economy is very strong. Middle East is coming back, and Asia is really on fire. I mean, Singapore, Hong Kong, China going well. But what's different this time is a more considered approach to the recovery. So hiring is continuing again, but companies are being more thoughtful about how they do that. They're not just throwing money at the problem, which is what was going on in the Middle East, for example, 2 years ago. I think organizations are paying a lot more attention to the structure and the approach. How do they face the market? What product is selling? How is it priced? And I think all of that is leading to a more complex, more considered, but ultimately a better HR human capital picture.
So what does that mean for human capital in general, but specifically for Australia?
Well, for human capital in general, organisations, CEOs, companies want transparency. They want to know what they get for the money they spend. So hence there is definitely significant growth in HR outsourcing, where there's clarity around what it costs to run a payroll or costs to buy training and deliver it, or to do mass recruitment. But I think the other important thing is that organisations have to be discerning, because there is limited labour pool around the world. There aren't qualified people in any market, even in China and in Asia, where we always think there's an abundance of labour. So that means organisational structures have to be more selective. I think what it means for Australia, which with an appreciating dollar is now not such a cheap place to make anything or to sell services, it means we've got to take another view of ourselves. We're a wealthy country, and yes, we have lots of natural resources that Asia and the rest of the world want, but we also have some very well qualified people who are good at running services businesses. So I think for individuals there are global career opportunities, because apart from the million or so Australians that work abroad, the world's going to come looking for more. But also countries and other companies that buy our services will be selective. And I think if you're an exporter or an Australian company, we need to recognise that we need to be in the value end, the value added end of a market. And so that both organisations and individuals need to work out how do they add value to the services they provide, and companies to the products and offerings that they have. So it's kind of as though Australia has to take on the mentality of a Switzerland or a Denmark and a Holland, where that's been the case for some time.
Structure-wise, and also from a retention and attraction perspective, how does that relate in Australia?
That's interesting. Well, if you think about that, that means that you can't have people in jobs when they're not value-adding jobs. So organisations have to really focus on the structure. Have they got the jobs appropriately structured around the goods and services that they're providing? It means that the attraction and retention of knowledge workers is paramount. And the good news is knowledge workers want to learn and grow the whole time, so that's an emphasis on continuing learning and development. And if the jobs are adding more value in a more complex organisation, by definition they're going to be more interesting. And I think that means that all the basics have to be right. The organisations have to have the right employee value proposition. People need to know immediately what it's like to work for that company. What's the public impression? With social media, everyone can find out how good you are as a place to work. So how clever has the organisation been about that? Is it transported through word of mouth, their website, referral programs? And then frankly, all the recruiting processes of how they project, interview and evaluate people have to be spot on. Good enough isn't going to be good enough anymore. It's got to be great. And that's what the selection processes have to reflect.
Well, thank you, Andrew, especially at a time that survey results are showing that the focus is not so much now on funding, but it's moved more to attraction and retention strategies. So I think that there is something in your comments for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.